When I look into the faces of people who carry pain that is invisible to the world, I see strength that was never chosen but was forced upon them.
Mhm.
Trauma has a way of shaping us, of teaching us lessons we never asked to learn. For many of us, one of those lessons is that disrespect is normal. When you grow up in an environment where your voice wasn't heard, where your needs were dismissed, or where love was conditional, you internalize the idea that being disrespected is just part of life. And over time, you begin to confuse endurance with worthiness. You tell yourself, if I can handle this, then maybe I'm strong. But that is not strength. It is survival. The truth is, trauma wired your nervous system to anticipate rejection, to minimize yourself, in order to keep the peace, to silence your boundaries because they felt dangerous. And so you became comfortable with things you should never have had to be comfortable with. But here's the powerful part. You can, how trauma teaches survival, unlearn it. Healing is not about erasing your past, but about reclaiming your present. It's about recognizing that respect is not a privilege. It's a birthright. You do not have to prove you are worthy of it. You already are. Unlearning disrespect begins with self-compassion. When you start to notice the small ways you betray yourself, you give yourself permission to pause, to choose differently. It is not easy. You will stumble. You will feel guilty when you enforce boundaries. You will fear rejection when you speak your truth. But with practice, you begin to trust your own voice. You begin to understand that saying no does not make you unlovable. And slowly you replace survival with authenticity. You are not here to be small. You are not here to shrink to fit someone else's comfort. You are here to live a life that honors your dignity, your worth, and your wholeness. Healing is not linear. But every time you choose respect for yourself and from others, you are rewriting the story that trauma tried to give you. And that is courage in its purest form. Trauma teaches survival, but healing teaches freedom. Survival is what happens when you are forced to adapt to pain, to unpredictability, to situations where safety is never guaranteed. Survival is waking up every day in fight or flight mode, even when there's no visible threat. It's staying small to avoid conflict, pleasing others to avoid rejection, and silencing your voice to avoid punishment. Survival is smart. It is your body's way of keeping you alive. But here's the truth. Survival is not the same as living. It's a holding pattern, a pause button that never seems to unstick. When you are in survival mode, disrespect feels familiar. It doesn't shock you because your nervous system has been conditioned to expect it. It's almost like background noise. You notice it, but you tell yourself it's not worth making a fuss over. You convince yourself it's why endurance isn't worthiness, normal, or worse, that you deserve it. This is where trauma lies to us. It tells us that our worth is measured by how much we can endure. But endurance is not the same as dignity. You were never meant to live a life where disrespect is acceptable currency for connection. Healing, on the other hand, is about relearning what safety feels like. It's about moving beyond just existing and beginning to trust that you deserve more than the bare minimum. Healing teaches you that your voice matters, that your needs are valid, that you are allowed to take up space without apology. Healing is not about erasing the past. It is about reclaiming power in the present. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice, a daily decision to notice when you are settling for disrespect and to remind yourself that you are worthy of respect without conditions. Freedom comes when you stop mistaking survival patterns for identity. Freedom is saying no without the fear of abandonment. Freedom is walking away from relationships where your dignity is not honored. Freedom is recognizing that love and respect are not rewards for your silence. They are the baseline of any healthy connection. Healing teaches you that freedom is not just possible, it is your right. And each step you take toward reclaiming that truth is an act of profound courage. Endurance is not the same as worthiness. Many of us who have lived through trauma confuse the ability to endure pain with proof that we are valuable. We think, if I can handle this, if I can carry more than anyone else, then maybe that means I am strong. Maybe that means I matter. But endurance is a survival strategy, not a measure of your worth. It is what you do when you have no other choice. Instead, when life backs you into a corner and your only option is to keep going. Endurance is about holding on through storms you never deserved, not about proving that you should have been in them in the first place. The danger of equating endurance with worthiness is that it keeps you stuck in cycles of disrespect and mistreatment. You begin to believe that being able to tolerate neglect, criticism, or even abuse is evidence of strength. You wear your scars like medals, but deep down you wonder why love feels so hard, why peace feels so unfamiliar. This is because endurance was never meant to be your identity. It was meant to get you through, not define who you are. Boundaries as doors to dignity. When you mistake it for worthiness, you accept relationships and environments that do not honor you. You tell yourself, I can take it, when what you really need is to say, I deserve better. A worthiness is not something you earn by carrying burdens. Worthiness is inherent. It comes with being human. You were worthy before the trauma. You were worthy in the middle of the chaos. And you are worthy now. Even as you heal, your value does not increase because of your pain, and it does not decrease because of your struggles. It simply is. The challenge is learning to separate your sense of identity from what you've endured. Healing asks you to release the need to prove your worth through suffering. It invites you to see endurance for what it is, evidence of resilience, not a definition of value. When you stop glorifying how much you can take and start embracing how much you deserve, everything changes. You begin to choose differently. You walk away from relationships that only recognize your ability to endure, and you seek out spaces that honor your right to be respected and cherished. That shift from endurance as proof to worthiness as truth is where real healing begins. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors to dignity. Many people misunderstand boundaries, often thinking they are about shutting people out, rejecting others, or building walls so high that no one can ever get close. But boundaries are not about keeping love away. They are about creating the conditions in which love and in respect can thrive. Boundaries say, this is where I end and you begin. This is what I need to feel safe, to feel valued, to feel whole. They are not punishments. They are invitations. Invitations for others to meet you in relationships where dignity and respect are non-negotiable. When trauma has been part of your story, boundaries often feel dangerous. You may have learned that saying no leads to rejection or punishment. You may have been taught that your needs are inconvenient or selfish. Over time, you adapt by letting others cross lines, by making yourself smaller, by prioritizing everyone else's comfort over your own. It feels safer to have no boundaries than to risk conflict. But this kind of living erodes your self-worth. Without boundaries, disrespect becomes normalized, and your spirit quietly starts to believe that your needs don't matter. Healing shifts this narrative. It reminds you that boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you, but doors meant to protect the sacred space of your dignity. Guilt and breaking old patterns, they don't close you off from others. They open the way for healthier, more authentic connections. Boundaries communicate trust. Trust in yourself to honor your needs, and trust in others to rise to the standard of respect you deserve. And here's the truth. The people who truly love you will not be threatened by your boundaries. They will be grateful for the clarity they bring. Practicing boundaries takes courage. At first, you may feel guilt, shame, or fear when you set them. You may worry about disappointing others, but over time, boundaries become an act of self-respect and self-love. They say, I believe in my own worth enough to protect. They help filter out relationships that thrive on taking and make room for those rooted in mutual respect. Boundaries are not barriers that lock you away from love. They are the doors through which love must enter. Doors that ensure it arrives with kindness, respect, and care. When you honor your boundaries, you honor your dignity, and that is one of the most powerful steps in healing. Guilt is often a sign you're breaking an old pattern, not doing something wrong. This is one of the hardest truths to accept when you begin the work of healing. For so long, you may have been conditioned to believe that your role is to please, to sacrifice, to put everyone else's needs above your own. That conditioning runs deep, and when you finally start making choices that honor your well-being, guilt almost always shows up. It whispers, you're being selfish, you're letting people down, you're not who they need you to be. But guilt in these moments is not proof of wrongdoing. It's a signal that you are stepping outside of an old pattern that once kept you safe. Trauma often teaches us to survive by accommodating others, by silencing ourselves, by taking on responsibility that was never ours to carry. These behaviors become habits, and over time, habits become identities. You start to believe, this is who I am. The peacemaker, the fixer, the one who doesn't complain. When you challenge these roles, when you say no, when you enforce boundaries, when you ask for respect, the old programming flares up. Guilt surfaces because you are rewriting the script. You are breaking generational patterns. You are choosing to stop betraying yourself for the comfort of others. The key is to recognize guilt not as a stop sign, but as a guidepost. Instead of asking, what did I do wrong? What old pattern am I disrupting? Very often, the presence of guilt means your respect is not earned. It's expected or doing something profoundly right. You are honoring yourself in a way you never have before. And of course, it feels uncomfortable. Growth always does. But the discomfort of growth is very different from the pain of self-abandonment. One keeps you stuck. The other moves you toward freedom. Healing requires us to redefine our relationship with guilt. Instead of treating it as evidence that we failed, we can learn to see it as evidence that we are evolving. Each time you face guilt and keep going. Each time you refuse to shrink back into old habits, you strengthen the muscle of self-trust. You begin to realize that guilt does not mean you are unkind, unworthy, or wrong. It simply means you are practicing something new. And new by definition always feels unfamiliar. Over time, what once felt heavy with guilt begins to feel natural. That is how you know you are not only breaking patterns, you are building a new way of living. Respect is not earned. It is expected. From the moment we enter this world, we are worthy of being treated with dignity. Yet, many of us who have lived through trauma grow up believing that respect is something we must constantly prove ourselves worthy of. Maybe you were taught that love had to be earned by being perfect, quiet, helpful, or endlessly forgiving. Maybe respect was withheld until you achieved, sacrificed, or bent yourself to meet someone else's standards. Over time, you began to believe that respect is conditional, a reward given only when you meet certain requirements. But this belief is a distortion. Respect is not a prize for good behavior. It is a basic human right. When we confuse respect with something earned, we accept relationships that diminish us. We tolerate disrespect because we believe it is our job to work harder, to try more, to prove our value. We justify mistreatment by telling ourselves, if I can just do better, they'll finally see I'm worthy. But the truth is, anyone who requires you to earn their respect is already showing you that they do not value your inherent worth. And when we internalize that message, we learn to place other people's opinions above our own sense of dignity. Healing asks us to rewrite this story. Respect is the baseline, not the bonus. It is the floor, not the ceiling. Every healthy relationship, whether with a friend, a partner, a colleague, or even yourself, must start with mutual respect. Without it, there can be no true connection. Respect says, I see you as human. I honor your boundaries. Reclaiming your voice, I value your voice. Anything less is not respect. It is control or convenience disguised as care. When you begin to expect respect rather than earn it, everything shifts. You stop negotiating your dignity. You stop tolerating spaces where your voice is dismissed. You stop chasing validation from people who withhold it as a way to keep you small. Expecting respect, and respect does not make you arrogant. It makes you grounded. It means you recognize that you do not have to beg for what should already be given freely. Respect is the starting line of love, not the finish line. And when you carry yourself with the quiet confidence that you deserve it, you create a standard that calls in people who are capable of honoring it and filters out those who are not. That is not just healing. That is freedom. Reclaiming your voice is the bravest form of healing. Trauma often teaches us that silence is safety. Maybe you learned early on that speaking your truth led to punishment, ridicule, or rejection. Maybe every time you tried to express a need or a boundary, it was ignored or shamed. Over time, you discovered that being quiet, agreeable, or invisible felt safer than using your voice. Silence became a shield, a way to survive. But while silence may have protected you in the past, it also kept you hidden. It disconnected you from your own truth, and it allowed others to define your worth. Reclaiming your voice is not about being loud or confrontational. It is about remembering that your words carry power, that your perspective matters, and that your truth is valid. It's about daring to speak even when your voice trembles, daring to ask for what you need, even when guilt and fear whisper that you shouldn't. It's about saying no without apology, and yes, without shame. When you reclaim your voice, you reclaim your right to exist fully without shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. This act is brave because it disrupts old patterns. Every time you speak up where you once would have stayed silent, you are breaking a cycle. Every time you name what you feel instead of burying it, you are choosing authenticity over fear. And authenticity is risky. It may lead some people to leave. It may disappoint those who are comfortable with your silence. But the truth is, the people who truly belong in your life, moving from survival to freedom, Dove, will not only survive your voice, they will celebrate it. Healing through voice is not just about how others respond. It's also about how you begin to hear yourself again. Each time you speak your truth, you strengthen your connection to your inner self. You start to trust that your feelings are real, that your experiences matter, that your story deserves to be told, and that trust becomes the foundation for confidence, self-respect, and freedom. Reclaiming your voice is the ultimate act of courage because it is the choice to no longer live muted by fear or shame. It is the decision to step into your wholeness and to let the world see you as you truly are. And that is not only healing, it is liberation. The work of unlearning disrespect, of healing the patterns trauma left behind, is not a quick fix or a straight path. It is a journey of courage. Courage to set boundaries, courage to sit with guilt and keep going. Courage to expect respect, and courage to reclaim your voice. Every small act of choosing yourself, of honoring your dignity, of refusing to closing inspiration shrink is an act of resistance against the story trauma tried to write for you. You are not broken for having survived. You are not unworthy because of what you've endured. You are proof that healing is possible, that strength can be soft, and that freedom is built choice by choice. So let this be a reminder. You are not here to simply endure. You are here to live fully, to love deeply, and to stand in your worth without apology. And every time you choose respect, every time you use your voice, every time you honor your boundaries, you are writing a new story, one of wholeness, dignity, and unshakable courage. Edge,